Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Elise, and this is my mystical bookshelf. And today I have another audiobook, and this is an Audible Original, and it says it's only from Audible, so I don't know if you can really get it anywhere else besides Audible. But yeah, so it's called The Glitch, and it's by Leann Slade. And honestly, I did not have high hopes for this book when I first started listening to it, because sometimes I've noticed Audible Originals aren't very good. Like, because they're the free books, they're the Audible Original. It's kind of like a Netflix original. It might not always be good. It's kind of a hit or miss. But with this one, it was really good. I was really impressed. I loved it so much, and it was narrated by Sam Claflin and Daisy Edgar Jones. And both of them were really great narrators. It follows this couple who, like, they broke up with each other like 5 years ago, and they're still wondering about one another. Like, what would life be like if they hadn't broken up? What would life be like if they ended up staying together, or if they could change just one thing? Like, what would happen? So it kind of follows that, and it's a very unexpected twist. It's a time traveling story, but it's not time traveling in the conventional sense. Like, it's very interesting themes, and it's time traveling done in a way that I had never seen done before, so that was also kind of cool. Because I feel like when you read a time traveling book, it's like, oh, you want to go back, you want to go to the past, or you end up younger, or you're like 30 and you go back to being 15, or you're like 60 and you go back to being 20, and it's just like all this theme is just way overdone, in my opinion. But this one, it had like a very fresh take. Like, so Grace and Henry, those are the main protagonists, and they're lovely. They're lovely people. I really enjoyed reading about them. I definitely enjoyed, I don't know what just fell. Apparently Claudine wanted to be in the video. But, so, yeah, Henry and Grace, they're lovely people. They're a lovely couple. And it follows them in like 5 years back. And it goes back to like what would happen if they ended up not breaking up, or if they could make it work. So like Grace, this like 5 years into the future, like before she time travels, it goes through Grace's life and what her life is like now that her and Henry aren't together, and her life's not really going that great. And so she has this restaurant in the very beginning, and it's going bankrupt, and that's kind of sad, because Grace is like a culinary student, and she's really good at what she does, and she thought maybe she could run her own business and run her own restaurant. But it didn't end up working. It didn't end up working out like at all, and her business ended up going bankrupt. And so it ends, like the book starts where her restaurant is ending, and it starts on her the night before her 30th birthday, and she's really thinking about all the things that had happened 5 years prior when she was 24, going to turn 25. And she was just like, what would happen if I never met Henry, and maybe my restaurant would have worked out better if I wouldn't have met Henry. So that's her thinking with going into this. And the whole thing that is the catalyst of this story is that her and Henry, they actually meet up like after the breakup, like 5 years before the time traveling takes place. And so they meet at this airport, and they are just like in awe that they see each other. And that's really what gets Grace thinking about everything that happened, because Henry was basically like the love of her life, and she was devastated by the breakup and devastated that her restaurant's not working out. And she just wants so wholeheartedly to get a do-over. So she goes home and she drinks some wine, and she just, I don't know, she thinks about her grandmother too. And like her grandmother's in the hospital, and she gets this call about her grandmother, which is also another big catalyst of the book. So she thinks that she doesn't know what's going on with her grandma. So she is worried about her grandma too in the beginning of the story. And she remembers something that her grandma had told her. And it was like, if you believe in something strong enough, you can make it happen, or you can manifest it to happen. So Grace kind of does the manifesting thing. She thinks about like what she wants to do different, like in her life, if she were to go back 5 years to being 25 again instead of 30. So she thinks about that really hard, and she grabs these crystals that her grandma had given her, and I guess she thinks that they have some magical power. I don't know. She was drinking a lot of wine in the beginning of the book, so it made me think she was a little crazy in the beginning, because I was like, I don't know, crystals, I don't know if they have any power or not. To me, I don't think they would, but for the story's sake, I guess they did. But so yeah, so she goes and she like passes out from drinking too much, and then she wakes up and she's 5 years younger. She wakes up and she's 25 again. And that's kind of where the story starts off, is she wakes up and she's like, whoa, what happened? Where am I? What am I doing? And so she lives with her best friend again. Her best friend, when they were 30, she had moved out of their house and into her boyfriend's house. So now she's back with her best friend again, and she's like looking at her like, what are you doing here? And like she's asking her friend all these questions, like, you're supposed to be with your boyfriend, you're supposed to be moving in with him, and you're not supposed to be living with me anymore because you want to live with him now and stuff. But so Grace is really confused in the beginning, and then she kind of realizes that, oh wow, the time traveling thing worked. I manifested going back in time 5 years, and I want to try and fix my life, basically. So it kind of goes through that, but it goes through it in such a way that it's like, it's just nothing of what I expected. I did not expect any of the twists to happen, and I didn't, like, her and Henry end up meeting again, coincidentally, at the catering job that Grace had when she was 25, and she's trying to tell herself that she doesn't want to be with Henry again because it only ended up in heartbreak the first time, so why would the second time around be any different? And so it kind of just goes through the story where Grace doesn't want to be with Henry, but Henry and her end up getting thrown together anyway, and they actually do start dating again, which I thought was interesting. And so it kind of goes through their love story again, and it's told in like different chapters and different parts. So like it's going through, I don't know how to explain this. It's kind of confusing how they go through it at first, because first it's Grace and she's 30, and then the second chapter it's Grace but she's 25 and it's 5 years earlier. And it's like the chapters with Grace are the do-over, but the chapters with Henry are how it originally happened. So the chapters with Henry are how everything played out originally. And the chapters with Grace are the do-over, the glitch. That's what Grace calls it. She calls it a glitch. And so the chapters with Henry, it goes through how they first got together and how they ended up as a couple, and it goes through their breakup and what they did in the story to mess up their relationship somehow. And the crazy part, this is like the biggest twist, so if you have not listened to it and you want to, I would suggest not watching this video right away, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone, because this is actually a really good twist and I totally didn't see it coming. But Henry ended up time traveling too, which I thought was weird, and I don't know how it worked out like that. But he ended up time traveling as well. So that's why they ended up meeting each other again, because Henry had time traveled back and he wanted to do over with Grace too. So that's how they ended up meeting each other again. It wasn't just by chance, it was by Henry going back too and wanting to be with Grace again. So that's how the story kind of goes on for a while. But Grace doesn't know that Henry had also time traveled. She doesn't really figure that out until the very end. like the reader, like with the reader. The reader didn't figure that out until the very end either. It was just very mind-blowing, honestly. And the whole reason that time traveling even happened, this is an even bigger twist. And I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but this is how it's explained. Excuse me, my throat got dry. But it's explained that Grace's grandmother actually passed away, and she was able to like get energy from the afterlife, and she was the one who propelled Grace and Henry together back 5 years. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I interpreted it. Like, so Grace's grandma, she dies, she passes away, and she gets this energy from like the other side apparently, and so she manifests all that energy to go back 5 years. And obviously that's very unrealistic, I think. But for the story's sake, that's what happened, and it is really weird. And I don't know how Leann Slade came up with that idea, because that's something that I had never ever heard of being done before. Because normally with the time traveling, it's like the person goes to sleep and they're like thinking about all their regret and stuff, and that kind of manifests time traveling. But with this one, it's like someone had to die, and then that's how the time traveling started. But I don't know, it's just really weird. I gave this book a 5-star though, because it was really well done. And I thought Grace and Henry's love story was very well thought out and very interesting, and it was believable. And I thought it was also especially cool that they like both got a do-over, because it's not something that you see very often. It's only just one person time traveling, but in this one it's like 2 or 3, I guess, because in the time traveling back, Grace's grandma ends up living. So I don't know how that would work either, but I guess she manifested not dying, I guess. I don't know. It's really weird to explain. But it was a very interesting twist, to say the least, and I had never read anything like it, but it was definitely an epic love story, in my opinion, because Grace and Henry are totally meant to be together, and it kind of has these themes of like, what length would someone go to be able to redo their life and go back to the way they think things should be. So in the do-over, Grace doesn't end up starting a restaurant. She ends up, I think, just being a freelance chef, which works out better in the end, I think. And I think she ends up being a chef influencer. So I think she makes videos about cooking. So I thought that was kind of cool that she ended up being an entrepreneur in a different way, not in like the conventional owning a restaurant type of sense. Because I think that's where Grace kind of got mixed up to begin with, is she's not a traditional business entrepreneur. She's very unconventional, and I think it was just overwhelming for her to have a business like that. So it was very cool to see her get this redo and make smarter decisions with what she knew now. Because I think that's another theme in this book, is like knowing what you don't know. Like, she knew that the business wasn't going to work out, so she decided to do something different with her time and her money. And I think it was very ambitious of her to want to start a restaurant, but it just didn't work out in her favor. And I'm glad that she got a chance to redo her life, and I'm glad that she ended up going back in time and being able to fix her relationship with Henry too, because I think the original strain on their relationship had to do with the restaurant and the money, because Grace came from like not a wealthy family, and I think Henry also came from a not wealthy family, but he had worked really hard to get all his life savings and money to get a house. And when they first broke up, that first part was because of the money, because Henry ended up lending Grace money, and that's what catapulted them into not working out as a couple the first time. And the second time, it felt like Grace was more selfless and wasn't so focused on trying to make it big. She was just focused on, how can I fix my relationship with Henry, and how can I fix my life so that I don't make the same mistakes twice. And I think that was a really interesting part of the book for me, especially, is seeing Grace and Henry like redo their relationship, because they really do, they work out really well together. And I think that this whole point of the book is just to show that when we put aside our selfish decisions and we end up putting others before ourselves, things end up working out better. Because the second time around, Grace kind of put her own desires to the side and wanted to help everyone that was not in a good space the first time that everything happened. Because she ends up like doing business in a different way than what she thought. She ends up being able to help Henry get a house that he wants. And she also ends up helping her friend like realize that she wants to have children earlier than what she had initially anticipated, which I thought was very beautifully done. Like, because the first time around, her best friend, Sheena, I think is what her name is, but Sheena starts her own law firm very young, and she's not focused on the family aspect at all. And so she ends up not being able to have children, or she figured out too soon that she couldn't have children. And so the second do-over, Grace kind of shows her best friend that maybe you really do want a family, and maybe you can start your own law firm, but maybe try and look into the fertility issues sooner so that it's not too late when you want to have kids. So she ends up actually having a baby and getting pregnant, so that was kind of interesting to read about too. So it definitely felt like the theme of like putting aside your own selfish desires and helping people that you love. That was what I got out of it, because Henry and Grace end up making it work the second time around, and then her friend gets pregnant, and she doesn't end up having these late in life fertility issues. And it's just really interesting to see how everything is like a domino effect and how one thing can change everything. And I think that was the best part of the story to me. And I gave it 5 stars. I really liked the performance, especially. Like, Sam Claflin and Daisy Edgar Jones are great narrators. They have a really good chemistry together. And I loved hearing them and how their interpretations of Henry and Grace were. And it was just a really good story, and I totally recommend listening to it. I'm not sure how long it'll be available as an Audible original, but because I know sometimes they take down their Audible originals. But I think it just came out recently. Let me see when it came out. It says it came out in August of 2024, so it might be available for the rest of this year, because I think they at least keep them up for a year. So if you want to listen to this, I would recommend listening to it sooner rather than later. But yeah, so that was my thoughts on that book, and I really loved reading it. I listened to it right before the new year, so it was kind of a cool way to end the year, like end the year with a bang, because it was a really good book, and I recommend listening to it for sure. And thank you for all of your support, and if you've read it or listened to it, I guess, because I don't think it's a physical book that you can read, since it says it's an Audible original. But anyway, if you've listened to it, please let me know what you thought. I would love to talk about it with you in the comments. And if you have any suggestions for what I should do for my next video, please let me know. I would love to take feedback from my listeners and my viewers, and I just thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next video. So goodbye, friends!